it really kind of trickles down into every aspect of my life. So if I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this podcast and it's kind of draining my money and my time, but fuck it. I said I was going to do it. So I guess I'll stick with it. Otherwise I look like a complete cunt.
What's the most efficient path to victory against this particular opponent?
He's dropping off the choke here. We could see the finish. It's looking tight. Tight it down for him.
Hey guys, welcome to the Essential Jiu Jitsu podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kwan. The Essential Jiu Jitsu podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu Jitsu. And today I have Professor Josh Presley with me. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming. Josh is the owner and head operator of Presley BJJ in Wellington, Nova Scotia. And also he has a podcast, the Great Canadian BJJ Show. I'm going to leave links at the bottom in the show notes for you guys to check it out so you can see Josh's work. I know you do a lot of technique stuff on Instagram. I was scrolling through your Instagram before this conversation, sort of trying to check out what you're putting up, and it's pretty cool seeing some of the stuff you got. First of all, how long have you been a gym owner?
Well, I've been a gym owner for just over a year now. So this is still, pretty new for me. I'm sure, as you know, you're a gym owner too. The first year is always going to be a pretty wild ride. I think no matter kind of where you are in the world or what your situation is. So yeah, it's definitely been, it's been a lot of fun, and it's been a kind of a crazy learning experience, but it's been great. I'm really happy with where I'm at with it right now, and with my team and my own personal jiu-jitsu. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about it with where I'm at for a year or so in.
Yeah, I mean that's not a long time, especially starting any business. I mean, like I have multiple businesses. I'd say only one of them is successful, and that's my school. The podcast is like it's a passion project, right? Like when you start a business, you're in the red for at least 3 to 5 years before it even, assuming it doesn't fail, before it starts to actually pay off in any way, shape, or form. A lot of these businesses just start as like passion projects, and I think anyone who starts a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu related business is pretty much directly related to passion and is not doing it because they think that they're going to get rich. But just that persistence, I think that kind of translates through BJJ for me anyways. It really kind of trickles down into every aspect of my life. So if I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this podcast and it's kind of draining my money and my time, but fuck it. I said I was going to do it. So I guess I'll stick with it. Otherwise I look like a complete cunt. So being a gym owner for a year, that's cool. What was your profession before going into jiu-jitsu? Well, professional, making jiu-jitsu your income.
Yeah. So, I mean, I went to university. I'm 33 years old now. If you don't know, I've done jiu-jitsu for probably 16 years now. I started when I was 17 years old. I went to university for accounting. So I got my undergrad in accounting, and I was at the point where I was like, I didn't really want to know. I didn't know what I wanted to do, like with my life, like everyone's trying to figure out, and everyone was doing kind of their professional designation with their accounting and stuff. And man, I just looked at everyone that had those designations and all those super professional accounting jobs, and no one had a life that I wanted. So I was like, I don't want to go any further with this, but I didn't really know what I wanted because, as you know, especially years ago, having and running a jiu-jitsu school and having that as your income, that was not really a thing. Like everyone just kind of did it on the side. If they did it, they were losing money just to kind of run classes. At least here in Nova Scotia, like it was guys that were running it. There wasn't many gyms, and it wasn't like a moneymaker at all. So, I kind of floated around, I guess, just did some accounting jobs. I still do have a day job doing my accounting. I'm hoping to eventually transfer and just do the full-time gym thing, hopefully in the near future. But yeah, so I've always kind of done that. That's been my kind of safety net for, if shit goes bad. I have my accounting degree in my back pocket, and it does definitely help me with my gym, kind of keep my finances in order, personally and with the business. And it's definitely useful, but I definitely enjoy the jiu-jitsu a lot more. And just like you said, like being in the red, struggling at the start, to me, it's just all jiu-jitsu, man. Like that's exactly what jiu-jitsu is at the start. You suck at the start. You're going to suck at business. at the start because, most people don't have a whole lot of experience with it. I know I really didn't. So you definitely learn a lot. You learn a lot about people. You learn a lot about relationships. You learn a lot about things that you don't even expect to learn about. So I think it really is a blessing in a lot of ways having a gym. I'm not saying it's easy because, as you know, it's definitely not easy. You have to, it's a lot of struggles along the way. But yeah, I guess that's a long-winded answer of saying that I have an accounting day job and do jiu-jitsu on the side day and nighttime, I guess. Yeah.
So we're very similar aged. You're not as old as me. I'm going to be 36 in February, but I've also been training about 15, 16 years as well. And, I had a previous career as well. And just tell me kind of course, as you already mentioned, your goal is to make the gym your full-time gig, right? Like you want to focus on jiu-jitsu. And I know what that's like working 2 jobs. And then like you have that goal in your mind, like, fuck, like one day I'll just be able to go and just do jiu-jitsu and just focus on jiu-jitsu. And then it's going to happen for you. One day it's going to happen. You'll be like, fuck, like somehow I sort of escaped the system and it's the coolest feeling ever. But just sort of tell me like how it feels for you. You went to university, you became an accountant, and then like just as you were about to get into that career full time, you realized you're like, actually, I don't fucking want this. This isn't where for me, I was the same way in the culinary arts. I was like, I don't want to toot my own horn, but like I was pretty fucking talented at cooking. And that was kind of, I thought I was going to be like, a big wig fucking executive chef. I never wanted to open a restaurant, but like working hotels all over the world, that was the goal. And then, I got married and had kids. I'm like, well, I guess I'm not going all over the world. And then they're like, oh, do you want to move up? And I was like, well, that means I am going to have to work in the evenings, which means I can't do jiu-jitsu. And I was like, fuck, this is not in line with like what my heart is telling me that I want. My heart is telling me, if you go through just go through with your culinary career just because you've made it this far, you got your apprenticeship and everything and clearly outshining a lot of people around you. It's like, would you be happier doing that 10 years down the road? And I thought about it 10, 15, 20 years down the road, sticking in that industry, and just my heart just filled with regret thinking about how I would feel and how my body would feel, And so I guess that's a long-winded question. My question for you is like, what's the thought process when you commit yourself to something, like you go into university and then you realize like, actually, this isn't what I want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this happened over a longer period of time. It wasn't like a split second. Like I was like, oh no, I'm not doing accounting and I'm just going to do jiu-jitsu, or this is more what I want. But I guess the way I look at it is, you got time and you got money. And for me, I'm a big family guy. Anyone that knows me knows I'm very close with my family. I've always been very close with my grandparents and my parents. And everyone, when you're growing up, your parents always tell you got to get a job that you make good money. You got to get a job that you make good money. Take care of your finances and stuff. At least my parents did. So, it seemed like accounting, okay, people make good money, have good professional jobs with that. But like I said, I worked in some accounting jobs and I just saw like, well, all these jobs that I would be having in the future, these people didn't look like they had the type of life that I wanted. It just looked like it wasn't any fun at all, even if they were making a lot of money. And my grandparents would even tell me sometimes like, oh, you're going to have to go out west once you get your degree, because you're going to have to chase where the jobs are and this and that. And I always just thought like, but I don't want to do that. Like I want to stay here with my family and I'll figure it out, whatever that's going to be. And I always trained jiu-jitsu on the side, but it wasn't something where I was making a lot of money, but I was spending so much time doing jiu-jitsu. Even when I was in university, I started training in my last year of high school, but I would schedule all my university classes so I could get more jiu-jitsu training. I would still try to go and do tournaments. Everything was just like around jiu-jitsu. I wouldn't go to party on the weekends because I wanted to train the next day. I would still study hard and I still got good marks. But the more time went on, it was just, the less I kind of saw myself with the accounting crowd of people. Like they were still kind of my friends and stuff, but it's like I belong with the jiu-jitsu crew. And at this point, I was still much more of a competitor and just doing the classes. Now I'm more of a teacher, and I get a lot more like feedback now, like, oh, like you're an awesome teacher, like like we love your classes and stuff. But I didn't have quite as much of that at the time when I was going through university, because I was just doing classes and training with my friends. So yeah, it was definitely like a long couple years of like, well, what the fuck am I really going to do and what's going to happen? Because I want to just do jiu-jitsu, but I didn't really see how I could make money at it. I wasn't thinking, oh, have a school, because the school that I trained at, the guys, they kind of were telling me, we don't make any money off of this. Then, as you know, circumstances and things just kind of happen in life that kind of push you one direction or another. The gym that I started at, that gym kind of splintered apart, and I ended up at another gym where a large collection of the higher belts and stuff went to have their own gym. I was there for a few years. Then COVID happened, and actually it was really COVID that kind of led to me having my own gym, because as you know, it was startup, shut down constantly. If you train jiu-jitsu and you love it, you're going to want to do it kind of no matter what is going on. So I ended up kind of getting my own thing set up. And that's just kind of how it happened. But it was definitely a long struggle. And I think it's a little bit easier for people nowadays to make a living in jiu-jitsu. And now they see it. They see guys like me and you and other people out there. Like, you can do it. You really have to work your ass off to do it. But it was different, man. Like, if you didn't go through that period in jiu-jitsu where instructionals weren't super popular and there wasn't a gym on every single corner, like, you don't know what it felt like to have a black belt or be a good grappler and kind of think like, what am I going to do next? Because there wasn't really a whole lot of options, right? I'm sure you can relate to that.
I mean, absolutely. And starting a gym during the COVID time, I mean, we just remember how fucking stupid all that was. That was just, I've been on podcasts before and I've talked about COVID. Honestly, it bores me, but I think most people know my opinions on the whole situation. I was pretty vocal about it. Just out of curiosity, like, how many hours a week are you at the gym, and how many hours a week do you do your accountant job?
Yeah, so I mean, today was a holiday, so it was a little different. But usually, so tomorrow's Tuesday. I'll teach a morning class, 6:15 in the morning until 7:30. Then I work my job 9 to 5. So I spend an hour or so with my wife and my son, make them breakfast, go to work, come back home. I'm home by like 5:30. Hang out with them. We put our son to bed, and then I teach a night class at 7:30 to 8:30. I do that 4 weekdays. I take Wednesdays off. So I got 4 days during the week where I do the morning and the evening. And on the weekends, I just do one class Saturday and one class on Sunday. I mean, that's pretty much.
You do accounting.
What's that?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's pretty much I feel like the max schedule that I can handle personally for myself. And, I'm not rolling hard every single class. I wouldn't be able to. I don't think my body could handle it. But yeah, I run about, I'd say 9 or 10 classes a week, and I teach them all myself.
Mm-hmm. So do you have other coaches there helping you out?
No, not currently. It's something I probably will get going in the not too distant future, because I'm going to have, I'd like to start having some kids classes, and I would like to introduce some coaches helping with that. I think that would be a good start. But yeah, I do definitely have a smaller gym, but right now I think I do kind of have a little bit of pride, and like, I know the people that come here, they want to train with me, they want to learn from me. So I do have a little pride in that. Like, I really do enjoy teaching all the classes. I know that's something I'll probably have to let go of a little bit as the gym expands, for sure. And I am having a second kid here, also really any day now. So,
oh man, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Our son is 20 months old now, and we're about to have our daughter. Really could be any day. She's due on November 5th.
Wow.
But yeah, man. So it's a busy life.
Absolutely. It's very similar to me, actually. I got a son and a daughter. My daughter's 6 and my son is 4.
Okay.
And having kids is just like, I don't have to tell you how amazing it is, right? And it actually, for me, it really motivated me to like be better at everything I was doing. Like, fuck, because now
100%.
Now there's other mouths that need to be fed. It's not just my selfish ass, but it's like now everything I do directly will impact the future of my kids. So it's like, I better fucking make this work, or make something happen. If this doesn't work, I got to do something else. So you're doing you're doing like back-to-backs 4 days a week, is if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, well, I do like I run a morning class. I do my job, my accounting job during the day, and
Yeah.
I'm back home, and then I teach an evening class. So yeah,
Yeah. I have huge respect for that because I did that for a couple of years when I made the switch. And I think a lot of people who do who do have a school, unless you're like a world champion and someone wants to like partner with you and they're like, hey, I'll back you if you want to run the program. You have some rich sugar daddy. It's like most of us come from a place where we already have a career. And then there's like that shift, it's like, okay, when am I going to be ready? Like, okay, it's great to start the gym. I start the gym. I get all my, I get people coming through the door and you do all your branding and all the fun stuff and you get the system set up and it's, as you know, a lot of trial and error. But then at some point you're like, when am I going to make that jump? It's kind of like when you, you and your woman like decide to get married. It's like, when are we ready to get married? Or when are we ready to buy a house? When are we ready to have a kid?
Like, having a kid.
Yeah.
You're never,
and like, yeah, you're never really ready. And it's just like, you kind of just have to do it. Like in the job that I was in, I was getting like very, very jaded near the end of my career with it. I was done with it. And then of course, as you know, working 2 jobs, cause I consider, running the gym operations as another job and it's very physically demanding. Like you said, you can't, it's very difficult to train to your full capacity when you're doing a job during the day, especially when it's like 8 or 9 hours, during the day. And it's fucking hard. So I have a lot of respect for that. And how do you know when, I mean, you don't know when yet, but how are you going to know, like, when is it time to actually just make that jump and be like, you know what, I'm focusing 100% on the gym. Like, do you have a couple of, like, markers that will give you that indication that like, okay, I need this much money or I need to have this established before it's time to just give up accounting? Or are you planning on doing the accounting for your gym? Because that is actually a big job in itself. I hired an accountant. My mom's actually an accountant. She retired. So now I like hired an accountant because, man, like I was doing a lot of the books for a while. And I'm like, this is just like my time could be allocated somewhere else. I'd rather pay someone to do something like this, right? So, are you planning on doing the books as well when you quit your day job?
Well, I don't know. At the start, I probably will, but it depends, I think, on how much it grows. And just like you said, your time is going to be better spent somewhere else. One thing I constantly think of since I've opened my gym is when I was in high school, I had an economics class. And I had a professor, teacher, whatever, and he taught us about opportunity cost. The time you spend doing one thing, you say yes to something. It's basically you say no to everything else, right? And I really, really get that having a gym because the time that I spend doing the accounting is time that I'm not planning a curriculum. The time that I'm registering students is time I'm not cleaning the gym. Like, having to do everything and like being an entrepreneur and having your own gym, it's great in a way, but you also kind of have to do everything. So it's a lot of different hats.
Yeah. At least at first.
Yeah. 100%. So yeah, I do have some kind of numbers and some ideas in my head. And I mean, I hope I can get it going soon, man. I'm done with this accounting stuff. I could tell you guys, I can tell you horror stories about working crappy accounting jobs. I'm sure just as you could with your job. But yeah, I'm hoping in the very near future, I'll even say in the next 6 months to a year, hopefully on the sooner side of that. But I have a paternity leave coming up with our daughter being born, and I'm really going to try to hopefully sit down and hammer out a real plan. And I do have some kind of general ideas of how I can kind of get things going. And just like you said, I really feel like it's a situation where I'm never, ever going to feel like, okay, now I'm 100% ready. It's just like, you just do it. You just do it or don't. And if it doesn't work, then fuck, I guess I'll just go back to the shitty accounting job. But I think it's going to work. I feel like I've built up a good name. I've built up a good reputation. And yeah, it's just, I'm definitely a more conservative person. I think if most people that know me would kind of know that. But this is definitely something I believe in. And it's something that I've spent all of my time on and all my whole life, bro, since I've been 17. I've just been fucking training jiu-jitsu. So I'm at the point now where I really, really enjoy teaching. I know I'm a good teacher and I can help people get good at jiu-jitsu and understand jiu-jitsu. And you know that there's a lot of teachers out there and instructors out there that I don't want to put anyone down, but it's just, there's some that are better than others. And I feel like I'm good at this, and I can give people a good quality product, and I can be, I think you can't go wrong if you want to do my classes. I can definitely help you out, and I'm a lot of fun to train with. My classes are a lot of fun, so I just want to share that with more and more people. And I think, kind of going off on a side topic, but I'm sure you've learned too, you open up a gym, sometimes you think, well, it's just going to be all people like me that want to train hard and do competitions and blah blah blah, but it's not. It's not at all. It's a lot of sometimes older guys that are just looking for a hobby or looking for something to do. Sometimes, older or middle-aged women that want to learn a little bit of self-defense. They want to put their kids in it. It's a lot of different demographics that you might not be expecting. It's not just going to be what you think of, it's just going to be me and a bunch of competition guys in there. It's not going to be that. So I'm glad that
no, because then you wouldn't make any fucking money. Trust me.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You have to be more open to, the average kind of person. And yeah, I've trained at quite a few gyms and I've seen a lot of different people come and go. So I feel like I've got a good handle on running good classes, trying to make it fun, trying to make people feel involved and feel like they matter in there. So yeah, I feel like, I'm always interested on how people run classes and stuff like that too. It's a question I actually had for you. We can get into it or wait for later on. But yeah, just kind of how people structure their classes. For me, I don't like the classic warm-ups, running in circles and all that stuff. I don't do.
No, we're past that now, I think.
I hope so. I feel like most gyms are past that. Like for me, I kind of have a weekly topic, either stand up, ground top, ground bottom, something like that. Like last week, we were just doing gripping from open guard. Okay, you start, the guy's standing, your butterfly, you grab 2-on-1. The warm-up drill was he's just moving around and you're just maintaining your guard, a little bit of guard retention. And then we went from there, just getting into a single leg X, sweeping him from there, getting the ankle lock. That's plenty of technique to me for an hour class, cover 2 or 3 main kind of concepts. And then we usually do a little bit of positional sparring. I like to mix it up. I'll do sometimes a positional sparring, or sometimes I'll go with like that designated winner game that's kind of popular now. One person go 40-50% while the other person gets to work the majority of the offense, which I think is really good to build up people's confidence, especially in the beginning
100%.
when you don't get to win very much. Yeah, so what do you like to do? How do you kind of run your usual class?
I mean, I've done all types of shit. I remember years ago, I've been teaching since I was a purple belt, so I've probably been teaching around 10 years, and I've done the whole we're gonna do we're gonna jump around and do bullshit calisthenics or whatever, and then I was looking around what are we doing? We should be doing some jujitsu instead of we should be doing jujitsu, stuff that will get you better at jujitsu. So I got rid of all that years and years ago, and then and then we're doing things like speed drills, and then I looked at that, I'm like, actually, these speed drills are kind of retarded too. Why are we wasting time just drilling for reps and drilling for speed? Let's now add a little bit of light resistance or whatever. So it's changed over the years. Our classes are all 2 hours long. Usually it's an hour tech, hour of training. Recently, we went full eco for 3 or 4 months just to really immerse ourselves in that game plan, because a lot of my students were talking about it. And I started listening to what Greg Souders was saying, and it seems like I can't do a podcast without mentioning it nowadays. But we did it, and then there was a lot of good feedback. There was some negative feedback. The main negative feedback was that people said it was honestly too hard to just do full positional constraint-led training for the whole hour and then be expected to roll after and then do that every single day. And a lot of the recreational guys said it wasn't as much fun as practicing new techniques. And they also said their perception was that they weren't learning as much. While I think they were probably improving more in terms of motor skills, I think that jiu-jitsu is more than just hitting a baseball or kicking a soccer ball. There's like a lot of wisdom and knowledge and things you need to, little traps and things that you got to look out for, and new moves that are constantly being invented. So I love eco style training. I think that in terms of training your mind and your body to come together and have that motor skill connection, that's how to do it. But at the same time, you go see Craig Jones do a toe hold through his legs. You're like, oh, well, I guess that's a move now. Like, we got to like think about that now. Or, you see a berimbolo for the first time.
Yeah.
It's like, how the fuck are you going to teach your students to do a berimbolo using the ecological method? Yeah. Why wouldn't we just try that a couple of times, right? And so my classes have now gone back to, I don't know if I like the word traditional, because I think traditional jiu-jitsu training's honestly like, it's bullshit. Like, a lot of it is like the speed drills and the running around. And like, even at the highest level gyms in Brazil, you see guys like jogging around and like 1, 2 toreandos. It's like, okay. But I really like the designated winner game. I think that is so awesome, because it's still live resistance, but it is, the athlete is able to complete their goal. And also it's not competitive. I mean, and that sounds so counterintuitive. Like, if you talk to guys from the eco camp, they'll be like, but this is a competitive game. It has to be competitive to replicate real training. It's like, yeah, but it can be realistic with live intelligent responses without being like overly competitive. Like, oh, it's me versus my training partner. And a lot of what the recreational guys were saying was that it didn't feel like they were collaborating with their partner. It didn't feel like they were creating a bond with their partner and socializing. It just felt like they were fighting the whole time. And after a while, it really wore down on them, and they wanted more techniques. They wanted more specific mechanic instruction, right? So again, I'm somewhere in the middle, where my class structure, I think like a week of this topic, a week of that topic, I think is good. But sometimes I like to just mix things up and just throw random shit at my students, so that they're like used to one thing. And it's like, now we're defending arm bars, and they're like, oh fuck, now their brain is getting all like, getting those learning centers just like fired up. Now we're doing something completely different from what we were doing. But for the most part, I would say, we warm up with like a light game of some sort, maybe like a designated winner type game. Then we'll go into a tech, we'll try it, but then we'll go right into live resistance. And maybe we'll do that one more time before we go into something live, right? And I just opened up a class on Wednesday, which is, I didn't know what to call it. I didn't want to call it eco training, or I didn't want to call it comp class. I just called it positional sparring. So it's going to be an hour of basically eco style training, and then an hour of free rolling. So I'm very much on the side of like, I know how valuable ecological training is, but I also see value in explicit instruction. I see value, you watch the best coaches, the best athletes in the world. Maybe this is an anecdotal observation, but they're all using some form of explicit instruction as well. Yeah. And they all do some form of positional instruction as well. So they're using a mixture of both approaches. And a lot of the eco guys are like, well, you can't do that, because now you're giving explicit instruction, which is taking the student's attention away from the environment. It's like, yeah, but I can still fucking tell you that there's things to look out for. There's certain things that can happen. And I'm not telling you to replicate this. I'm just saying, be aware of these things. Think of this concept. Think of this detail here. Like, you're going to tell me that there's no such thing in jiu-jitsu as details or mechanics or techniques. And, it's just, I just don't fully subscribe to that. And all the eco guys are just like freaking out right now. That's fine. I'm not a purist. I went full eco for a couple months because I didn't know what the best way was. Yeah. And I wanted to see, as an experiment, how that would affect my game, how that would affect the room. And I did it. And now I'm back to kind of, I learned a lot from that and I'm using it, but I'm also going back to explicit techniques as well. Sorry, I know that's a long answer.
Oh, yeah, it's good.
A lot of talking.
It's interesting to hear that on the eco training. And my thoughts on it was, I almost think you need a certain level of training already before you can get what you're supposed to out of this ecological training. Because a
lot of people say that.
In my experience, most of my students, they want direction. If I just say, oh, just do this, they're going to be looking at me like, well, what do I do next? You know, like I feel like that eco training, it is great, but I feel like it's going to be a lot harder for people that are in their first 10, 20, 30 classes, because they're not really going to know the right reaction. And like you said, it's going to be more of a fight, which is interesting to hear, because then it's more of a struggle. It just feels kind of clunky. I think that designated winner game, you know, one person, you go 40%, and the other person, they're just kind of working their offense. I feel like that's just easier for people to kind of interpret, like, oh, okay, I'm just kind of letting him win, right? It's not.
You're still responding.
Yeah,
you're still intelligent responses.
Still responding, but it's not a flow roll, because I feel like if you say flow roll, people take that different ways too. You know, some people are fighting like it's just a regular match. Other people are just laying there like a dead fish. So I like the designated winner more, because it makes people kind of like, you know, try to act. I even say like, oh, think of it like a pro wrestling match. Try to make the guy look good, you know, like just different things to try, make people kind of try different things. So I think it's really important, especially in the beginning, to keep people's confidence up. Like me and you, like we were going to last in jiu-jitsu no matter what, you know, like we get beat up. We'll keep coming back, but not everyone will. And you want people to continue to enjoy jiu-jitsu and to do jiu-jitsu. And it's just not realistic for someone to just get beat up 2 or 3 times a week and just say, man, I love that. I'm gonna keep doing that. I think you want to get people to have some wins early on in training, even if they know like you're letting them do that. Like I had an experience recently, like I don't know if you were like this, but I definitely was like someone in training. Like I would never just let someone tap me. Like why would I do that? You know, I would always, you know, not that I'm like going crazy or anything, but no, I'm not just going to let someone submit me. Like, you know, this is the thought process I had for most of my training career. But nowadays, and a big influence in this is watching like Gordon Ryan train and the Danaher Death Squad guys, and they put themselves in really, really bad positions. I never used to do that. You know, if someone got my back, they really had to earn that. And then crap, and I have to fight out of there. But I'm watching Gordon Ryan train. He's letting himself get put in arm bars. He's letting himself get put in triangles and leg locks and all this stuff. So I was like, man, I think there's really something to be said about that defensive training. So now, you know, I'm a lot more apt to put myself in mount or let someone go on my back. And yeah, totally, I've tapped to my students, you know, but they know like I'm letting them do that, but they still like it, you know, like they're still kind of pumped about it. They're like, oh, I know you let me do that, but it still felt good, you know? So I feel like it's almost a win for both of us. Like I don't have the ego where it's like, I can't tap out, you know, cause I'm a black belt, whatever. I'm still just doing jiu-jitsu. I still have my ego in check enough that I feel like I'm just a student in this. I just do it cause I really love it. I know, you know, there's lots of people out there that can kick my ass, and, you know, I can beat up a lot of people too, but it really doesn't really matter in the end. And, you know, when it comes to business, you want more people to do it. And if I just fucking hammer all my students all week, no one's going to come back next week.
No, it's true. And I think I've been in training environments where the instructor does not give an inch, and it fucking sucks. Like you never get to see their full game. You never get to see how they defend certain positions. You know, when you have an instructor that doesn't let you score an advantage on them in training, like on one hand, you're like, yeah, that's great that I have this instructor who plays this super tight game. Like I know what that's like. But on the other hand, it's like nothing happens. And, you know, what you're describing there is exactly what I'm talking about, where you are now collaborating with your partner, even if it's like a white belt with 2 stripes. It's like how cool is that for them? You know, you're putting yourself in a full on arm bar. You could have gotten out 20 moves ago, but you're just like, yeah, like I'm trying to get out. All right, I'll tap out. And it's like, you know, he's like, fuck, like I felt what that armbar felt like on my professor. That's cool. You know, and I think there are some people who don't realize when you're letting them win. And that's when you kind of got to remind them like, hey, just so you know, like I'll fuck you up anytime I want, but you know, like we could be cool and we can definitely like get into some bad positions. And I think that the whole thing about being a gym owner, it's so different because, and I noticed this after doing eco, is I was like, man, like if people aren't having fun in the training room, I'm failing as a business person. You know what I mean? Like I'm having now multiple people tell me, hey, Matt, I know this approach is effective, but it's not fun. Like, I'm thinking about going somewhere else. And I'm like, shit, what the fuck? Like, that's the worst thing I could ever hear. You know, I've said it before on the podcast. I put fun up there with safety. It's like the same level of importance to me as a gym owner, because, you know, you can argue, oh, well, designated winner and, you know, a lighter style of training, like, it's not going to prepare you as much for the competitiveness of competition. Maybe not, but if the training's not fun and people stop coming to the gym and I don't have students coming through the door, that's not good either. Like, I don't want to have a gym culture that's all just people like me who just want to compete or, you know, had aspirations in the sport. It's like, I want to have, like you said, a well-rounded group of recreational people. And man, it's got to be fun. It's got to be fun for me. It's got to be fun for them. If it's over competitive and it's all just about winning all the time, it's like, I don't care how good you are. If it's not fun, then people stop coming. And I did just want to say, you know, I'm going to say something contrary to what you said, because a lot of people look at the eco approach, and that's a very common criticism, is they say it's better for higher level guys. I do think that there's truth to this. Like, if you were going to do just ecological training for a competition class for like pro athletes, it's fucking awesome. It's like the way to do it. I think constraint-led training with like a really high level group, you're going to get so much done. No one's arguing that. However, man, I have used it in fundamentals classes and I've used it for kids classes. So one thing that really sort of sparked my interest was how Greg talks about how he teaches like certain takedowns. Because I was asking him, I'm like, how do you teach takedowns with the ecological approach? You know, in wrestling, it's like usually there's like a series, right? Or a chain series off of a single leg, let's say. You know, I try to run the pipe, it didn't work. I'm going to duck out and go to the back. It didn't work. I'm going to go back to, you know, whatever. Things are sequential a lot of the time. And when you teach kids in sequences, you'll look at them on the wall and they'll just be like looking over there, not fucking paying attention. And it's no one's fault, because it's how their brains learn at that age. So, but if you gamify everything instead of giving explicit instruction, like, that's a time when I think explicit instruction does not work, is kids aged 5 to 9. For kids aged 10 to 14, I find explicit instruction actually worked quite well. From 5 to 9, I find that it really doesn't work. So instead, I build a game, and I'm going to copy what Greg says. He's like, okay, well, here's a game you could use. You could say athlete 1 starts with the single leg. Athlete 2 is just literally hopping around on one leg, trying not to put their hands on the floor or their butt on the floor. And athlete 1 who has the single leg, just try and put their hands on the floor or their butt on the floor. And then we do like a 30-second rounds back and forth playing that game. And what you notice is the kids immediately have way better balance, because they're like, oh, all I need to focus on is hopping on this one leg. So they're harder to take down. And the other kid is staying as connected as possible through this gamified approach. So that's when I was like, man, like, eco training does not necessarily need to, in my opinion, does not need to be for higher level athletes. It can work for a kid who's 5 years old, right? And then you add a new constraint. Okay, now the person who's in the single leg's trying to pull their knee free and trying to break free of the single leg. Other person's trying to put their hips on the floor or whatever, you know, and it's like, find a way to do that. And it starts to look like wrestling super, super fast. Even in the fundamentals class, you know, Greg's got a couple of foundational classes on YouTube, and he talks about foundations from guard. And he's designed a game where it's basically the bottom athlete is just connecting 2 feet to the inside of the knees and then trying to control the ankles for as long as they can. And then the next round, they now add the bottom players trying to put the hands or the butt on the floor. And I started playing this with my kids and with my fundamentals classes. And man, it's looking like Jiu Jitsu within like 10 minutes, which is crazy, you know? So it's like, I used to think, oh yeah, it will be better for high level athletes. But I think if you design your games well, totally applicable for like beginners, kids, because especially for kids, because kids love learning in games, right? They don't really like learning step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. It's just going to be ineffective. And I've seen that. But eco training for like young kids, simple games like that, you get a lot out of it.
Yeah, no, that's interesting to hear. I had not really thought about it that way. And yeah, I think it is important too. It shows you're a good coach because you're willing to change it up. I'm sure we've all experienced as coaches who don't change it up, and you go to class and you know what's coming next, and you know what's coming next. I think a good coach is willing to experiment. It's something I'm definitely willing to do in my classes. Sometimes I'll have in-house matches. Sometimes I'll make somebody do a Shark Tank. I've really just changed it up because you do kind of want to keep people on their toes. It is jiu-jitsu. It is supposed to be a little, kind of self-defense aspect to it, I think. And yeah, another thing I was thinking when you were talking about having fun with your training, like if you think back to when you started jiu-jitsu, like you probably kept going because it was fun, right? And then I'm sure if you've trained long enough, everyone's kind of got to that point where they were training, it was great, and then all of a sudden it wasn't fun anymore. Because I know I definitely experienced that. And in that situation, I feel like, you got to do kind of what's best for you, and you want to continue to do it, and you want to keep having fun, because I've been in the situation before where I'm still training and I'm going there every night, but it's not really fun. I'm not really enjoying it. And yeah.
Why was that, if you don't mind me asking?
I would say it was probably when I was transitioning gyms, because I was in a situation where, it just felt like a lot of negativity when I would go to one particular gym. And I don't know, I'm just really someone, I just feel like when I'm at the gym, I want to just kind of get the best out of the time I have. Because I know I'm there for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever it is. It's a very small portion of my day. So I want to use that energy to be constructive and work on my jiu-jitsu and have a good time. And I don't want to spend time worrying about where this person is or that person is or what this person's going to do. I'm not someone that is into drama at all. Like the people that would know me well, no, I'm not. I don't care about any drama. I don't know. I'm not into it. I just like jiu-jitsu, man. I just think it's cool and it's fun. And I think if you're in a situation where you had fun training jiu-jitsu and it's not fun right now, you probably need a change. And it's either a change in location, a change in gym, a change in instructor. But I feel like a lot of people kind of get to that point and they just don't know what to do and they just quit. And, I don't think there's anything wrong nowadays in jiu-jitsu with like kind of training other gyms, dropping in other places. I even take my students to other gyms around in Nova Scotia, just, for a fun thing to do. Oh, let's go to these people's gym. We did it a month ago. We had some kind of competition style matches, like we did a best of 5. We lost 3-2, and then we did an open roll after, and like it was great. We all had a lot of fun. We got to meet some new people in the jiu-jitsu community. So yeah, it's a lot different. Like than it was like years and years ago, where the gyms were a lot more closed-minded and stuff. But I think it all comes back to you want your students to have fun, because if they're not having fun, I feel like they're just going to find something else to do. Life is short. You want to enjoy yourself. So I want all my students to have a good time in the class, to learn something, obviously learn something kind of cool. That's what jiu-jitsu is about. And they're going to keep building skills. They're going to be good at jiu-jitsu, having fun doing it.
Yeah, I can tell just by your attitude that saying you're not afraid to try new things. You're not afraid to experiment. You're not afraid to expose your students to other teams. Like these are all signs of someone who has their ego totally in check. And doesn't have anything to hide. And I think a lot of people get a little bit insecure when it comes to cross training because they're worried about their students seeing something that they can't offer them, and that they're gonna gravitate towards somewhere else. And like, I mean, I'm a merit-based guy. Like I put my heart and soul into jiu-jitsu. So if someone's offering something that I can't offer, like I kind of want to know what it is, because I want to offer it as well. Yeah. Like I want to know where I'm lacking as a martial artist and as a gym owner. And if there's someone across the road who's got something better than me, like I need to learn it. I need to acquire it. I need to adopt whatever kind of practice that is. Like I just have that sort of Kaizen mindset, right? And I'm totally fine with my guys cross training. It was actually one of the reasons why I left my first team, was because I was teaching for the guy, and he said he saw that I was training at another gym, and he's like, yeah, you can't teach for me anymore. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, your moral compass is off. And it was actually on Thanksgiving. I was on my way to my now wife's family house uncle's house for a dinner or whatever. And I get this text message. I'm very disappointed in you. You would go train, because he had this personal beef with one of his students who left and opened a gym. And I was friends with him, and I went and trained with him. And I'm like, man, what the fuck? Like, I'm out of here. Like, I don't know. Thank you for like exposing yourself.
Yeah.
And now, I'm going to go somewhere else. And it kind of opened me up to the rest of the community, because I realized like, oh, I was in a place that, not only did they not support cross training, but they kind of deterred anybody networking within the community. They didn't support other tournaments. They didn't support any events that he wasn't running. And in the end, his whole network of gyms, he had a bunch of affiliates. It just fell apart, and he just fell off the face of the earth, basically because of shady business practices. So in the end, I think having that openness and just being like, you know what, like, it's a free market. If there's someone who can offer something that I can't, like, that's up to me to make this worth your while. You're spending good money to train with me. And I think a lot of gym owners, instead, they get jealous, or they say, they start treating people differently because they get wind that they're training somewhere else. It's just like, that's a really good way to like lose students. You know what I mean? Instead, you should step your game up as an instructor and sort of, I guess, step your game up. I wanted to ask you, like, how do you prioritize, and this is a very broad term, and maybe you can define it how you perceive it, mental training, and what does mental training look like to you?
Interesting question. To me, mental training, I think, when you're doing jiu-jitsu, a lot of it, it's a lot of mental training, even showing up. I hear people tell stories about showing up to class, and it's as if they're showing up to a fight, or, it's a real battle for them to even get to class and to show up. So I think that in itself is a very underrated aspect of mental training. Just putting yourself out there, going to this jiu-jitsu class. This is obviously in the early stages when people are just training. But I think it's very, very nerve-wracking for a lot of people, even just pushing themselves to go out and do something so out of their comfort zone. But I think where the mental training in jiu-jitsu comes in is with the positional sparring, and when you're in bad positions, not freaking out, not having a panic attack, trying to tell yourself to try to stay calm when your body, is telling you the opposite. And a lot of the sparring too, I'm not someone that like forces people to like continue sparring and everything, but I do try to push people too, like I want people to try to, push themselves, and you should leave here tired. And, thing that came up on a podcast I did recently is, you don't come here to be comfortable. You come here to be uncomfortable. It's a very good model for jiu-jitsu. I think the whole point of it is you're kind of putting yourself in a vulnerable situation, in an uncomfortable situation, and that is mental training. And I spend a lot of time on bad positions and fundamentals and all that stuff. So I want people to be comfortable getting out of bad positions, just like they are attacking from good positions. So I think a lot of the positional sparring that you do, anytime you're starting from side control or mount or anything where it's a bad position, where it's like, oh crap, this sucks to start from, I think that's the mental training, and where you have to remind yourself to relax and all that. What is it to you?
I was actually just going to say, okay, same question, but now off the mats, because like I can totally appreciate, I didn't even think about that. Like mental training being like, essentially we're talking about like becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable, developing that like that grittiness and kind of embracing the struggle. Yes, you're right. That is totally mentally difficult. Definitely one of the most difficult parts of jiu-jitsu, especially when you are one of the juniors in the room. And like, I always think about your knowledge depth, over the years in jiu-jitsu. When you come in, your white belt or even a blue belt, it's like you have a map, and the map is very, very small. And then as the years go on, it builds out, you learn more and more. And then like, 10 years, you're like brown or black or whatever. You're like, actually my map's pretty big right now. I feel more confident going into it's more fun going to the room because, you know more. It's like trying to have a conversation with someone, and you don't know very much of the language. You know a couple words here and there, and they're da 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 going off, and you're like I don't really know I don't really know what to say. I'm kind of like stuck here. It's not that much fun, but then you become fluent, through the years, and then it's like you're having a conversation. It's relaxing, it's fun. So for me, when I think mental training, I think about a lot of work that I do kind of off the mats. And again, eco guys are going to be creaming all over themselves just when I say, I do a lot of like instructional studying. I love instructionals.
Me too.
Personally, I can perceive my development through watching things. For me, it was in culinary arts, it was the same thing, but also watching like instructionals and seeing, how Danaher teaches a system or how Gordon teaches a system or Craig Jones. I love these guys. I watch them. I should say I love their work. I love their instructionals, and I can use a lot of it right away because you train 15 years and you train every day as much as you can. You become like obsessed with jiu-jitsu. It's like, I should be like proficient at this, but then I can just like plug in these little details here and there that I pick up. So for me, mental training, I mean, that's one portion of it, is spending the extra time off the mats to try to acquire new material, new knowledge. Even like podcasting is mental training. Planning a lesson, like each day I teach young kids, older kids, fundamentals and advanced. It's like, that's 4 lessons. I need to have some kind of an idea what I'm going to do going into each one of those classes. Not everything is set in stone, but to some degree, I know what I want to work on. And then also, I think mental training could be visualization. You go into a competition, going to a place that you've never fought before, or you're fighting someone you never fought before, in a different rule set, whatever, so many different variables. It's like, I kind of put myself in that position, and what's that going to feel like? What's it going to feel like if I get my guard passed or if I get taken down quickly and now I'm behind? Like, I think visualization is also very, very important. I think to some people more than others, but definitely like studying, mental study and watching tape and visualization, I think are kind of the main parts of mental training for me.
It's like how Danaher talks about too, how you don't just want to watch for entertainment. Like, you want to watch and put yourself in the shoes of the participant.
Yes.
And like, that's so important. And I record every single one of my classes and I post it on YouTube. This for the rolls. I just have a camera in the class. So I hit record before the rolls start. I record the rolls. I stop it. I go and I just upload it to YouTube right away so people can go and watch the rolls that they just had, because how important and how valuable that is to watch yourself on video. It's huge. And if you combine that with some instructional material, like, your game is going to skyrocket. I think that's so, so important. And I'm interested with the instructionals, because when you watch an instructional, how do you do it? Do you take notes on the whole thing? Do you just kind of watch it and try to absorb it? How do you do it?
It depends. If it's something that if it's a system that I'm completely new in, I watch the instructional knowing that I'm going to need to watch it probably again.
Yeah.
And I have taken notes before, although I'll say it's not a main practice of mine. Generally, I like to recall things from memory. Usually my study sessions are no longer than 40 minutes. If I go any longer, I start to forget shit. And even after about a half an hour, I could watch the same material the next day and be like, oh yeah, I forgot about that detail or whatever. So what I kind of want is that first sort of broad imprint of the material in my brain. Then I can go to the gym and try and play with it a little bit. And so I'm like, oh, I can now see what problems are coming up for me. I can see where I'm having success. I go back and watch it again and I see way more. I'm like, oh, I was missing that. I remember watching that detail the first time, but I forgot it. And now it's easier to remember because I've played with it. So, okay. I don't always watch an instructional from front to back. Sometimes I'll skip forward and watch it. Gordon on his instructionals, he does the target sparring at the end. So a lot of the time I'll go skip to the end and I'll just watch him roll sometimes. If it's close to a competition, I've done it where I just watch him roll. And I've also done it where I watch, I'll watch positions that I already play a lot, but I want like 1 or 2 small details. Usually when I watch, 40 minutes of instructionals, I'm looking for one detail, like one thing that I can use right away that will be readily available for me, because like I said, I'm pretty well rounded. I'm pretty. I want to be modest, but like I'm somewhat knowledgeable, and like it's easier for me to absorb an instructional than I think a blue belt, right? Like, because I already have a base level of knowledge. But like I said, I'm just looking for that like one or two little details in one study session. And then I go to the gym. I'm like, man, that detail made, look at this fucking guy. Sorry. For those who are just listening, my cat just, look at him. Oh my God.
Cat's here too.
Get out of here. Just like that one detail can really make a huge difference, and I know the eco guys, they're not a fan of instructionals, because they're like, well, that's explicit instruction. That move will never be repeated again. You're taking the attention away from the environment and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but I can fucking use it right away.
Yeah.
And I can use that concept, teach it to a group of people, and see them have success with it right away. So like, how is that not a net positive? When I go home and I'm just sitting on the couch doing nothing, I could be watching something. I could be absorbing information and just taking little tidbits and applying it to my classes or applying it to my own training. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh yeah.
I like to study all different topics, but generally, if there's a particular aspect of my game that I feel is weak, or even a particular aspect of my game that I feel is super strong, and I want to see what the best guy in the world does in that position, I'll just be like, I'll watch it and I'll be like, okay, where's that detail that I'm looking for? I'm looking for that one thing that will make it all worth it.
I'm a big note taker in all of jiu-jitsu. I'm a big documenter of jiu-jitsu. I document everything. But especially when it comes to instructionals, and the one that forced me to do this was Danaher, because his instructionals were so long, and I felt like I'm not going to be able to remember all this, so I'm going to have to start taking notes on this. But it ended up being really helpful in the end, because just like you said, if it's something I don't know anything about, I'm going to have to just watch it just to absorb it into my brain. I can't take notes if it's the first time, if it's like a brand new, if it's like, I don't know, something I'm not really into, like, I don't know, I'll just use like false reap as an example. It's not really something I'm really, really into. I would have to watch that and absorb it first, play around with it a little bit in the gym, then watch it again and take notes on it. That's what I would.
Yes.
But for like, I'm really into like Danaher and Gordon's instructionals too. But I will take on a lot of those, because what I found was it was really useful for helping me teach. I'm someone like you. I have to teach a lot of classes. I'm always trying to think of like the best things to teach, the best way to structure things. So I found like using like Danaher's like half guard as an example. Like I kind of just watch it and I'll make notes, not on everything, but on the main ideas, and just usually like 2 or 3 notes kind of per move or per kind of section, things that I thought were important or things that I think the students would think are important. Like, oh, the 2-on-1 grip on the elbow is really important to have this before you do the next step. Just something like that, right? So I feel like, and like you can't remember everything. So I feel like when I am kind of focus on half guard or focus on stand up or something, like now I have all these notes on these instructionals where I've watched Danaher's stand up series and I've watched Gordon's passing series and Craig Jones' leg lock series. So I can just go back and as a refresher for myself, be like, oh yeah, that was an important detail on this leg lock defense, or oh yeah, that was a different setup for this, where, I mean, I guess maybe I could go back and look through the notes, but I feel like it's helpful just for like learning too. And more like for like planning curriculums, I can just kind of cherry pick the best moves and the stuff that I found the most useful for when I watch an instructional. So that's how I like to do it.
Mm-hmm. I feel that like personally for me, Gordon and Danaher are like excellent instructors. Obviously, Gordon is like a, I don't want to use the word copycat, like, but he even uses like Danaher's words. He'll
say terminology.
He says like so. He says a day late and $1 short. I could drive a truck right through this big hole. It's like, dude, Danaher literally taught you those things. But you know what? We all do that with our instructors. We do mimic our instructors, both in our nomenclature, but also our mannerisms sometimes, and our personalities. It is true. But I find that Gordon, his instructionals are like, it's just like an autistic level of detail. Like he's so detailed. Sometimes I feel like he is giving us so much information. It's almost as a flex to be like, this is how fucking smart I am. I'm going to show you literally everything from the body lock that I know right now. You know, I'm going to have more later on, but like right now, like I want to show you kind of every outcome, where I think Danaher teaches to try to share he's trying to teach in a way that will make the information stick more for the student. For me, I find Danaher's instructionals actually easier to watch. I mean, I watch them on 1.7 speed because that's how I feel like it can be kind of slow if I don't. But I feel like the way he teaches, it's more geared towards the student actually retaining the information, whereas Gordon is like, I'm just going to show you everything. It's up to you to rewind it. It's up to you to remember it. And I think Gordon's stuff is honestly a lot more detailed. It's more updated. Whereas Danaher, a lot of the stuff that he teaches, it's like fantastic details and things that are great for beginners too, you know? And he, of course he has like his beginner fundamentals, go further, faster series. Right. So, yeah, I watch both those guys. I love Craig Jones's stuff too. One thing about Craig Jones that I love is that his instructional, I mean, the guy is like, he's basically a comedian as well. Yeah. And everything he does has like a sexual innuendo around it. And it's funny, but to me, it's kind of tiring. But one thing I love about his instructionals is they're super, like, I find them very, original, very unorthodox. Like if you've watched Power Ride or if you've watched like Octopus Guard, like super cool stuff. With Power Ride, he's like, I'm going to show you a bunch of ways to control someone, but they're not going to score. They're not like scoring positions. They're literally just to make your opponent feel your weight and make them tired and make them heavy, right? And or make them feel make them get tired over time. Like these positions are not how you score in conventional jiu-jitsu settings, but fuck it. That's not the point of the instructional. The point of the instructional is I want you to like exhaust your partner and make their life hell with these like positions. I'm like, that is such a brilliant way to look at pinning. It was something that I had never seen before. And I just watched his knee bar instructional. Some great stuff in there, like things that I never really considered, and how he's playing the knee bar position. You know, nowadays in the modern leg locks, everyone wants a heel hook, right? The heel hook is like the king. And he's talking about how, well, yes, but if I go for a heel hook, my opponent will make a defensive spin right away. They'll know that the heel hook is coming. But if I threaten a knee bar, now they're forced to turn to defend the knee bar, and then the heel hook becomes more available. So it's like all these little concepts. Craig is a incredibly intelligent grappler, and I really get a lot out of his instructionals as well. And they're way shorter. You know, it's usually like 4 volumes.
More condensed. It's like Danaher. You get the same stuff as Danaher, but it's like a much, much shorter version. He's great at marketing it. You know, though it's like, have you ever tried to explain Craig Jones to someone who's like just kind of getting into jiu-jitsu? You know, it's like, yeah, he's this kind of Australian guy. You know, most people in jiu-jitsu take themselves pretty seriously, and this guy doesn't at all.
Not at all. Yeah. He's fun to watch, and his personality is fun, you know, like it is fun. I mean, it would be better if he like won a big title. I feel like he's good enough that he should win, you know, an ADCC or whatever. But
I mean, he's been in the finals. You know, he is at that caliber, and it's the cool thing. Like you said, he's there. He's competing against all the best guys. He's competing against the Rotolos, against Kine and Duarte. He's going against all the best of the best guys, and he's there. He's doing it. But yeah, his information, they're all different. His I find you get the same stuff as Danaher, but it's a lot more condensed. Danaher's is different. Like you said, he repeats a lot of the same information, but that makes you remember it, and it makes, just like you said, it makes you learn it better.
It's a learning tool.
It's a learning tool. Yeah. He's really good at that. And Gordon Ryan, just like you said, it's like his DVDs are like a flex. Like, you know, here's everything I do. Here's how I beat this guy. Here's how I'm going to beat the next guy. And I'll just kind of show you everything. I'll show you every position. And no one that was making those DVDs, you would know this, put on that rolling at the end before him. I don't think anyone was doing that.
No.
They were like, okay,
Craig started doing it now.
Sweeps, and I'm going to put an hour of me sweeping people from half guard or passing people from half guard, and I'm going to do commentary on it. It's like no one did that before, right? And then watching this, like, wow, like this is such a valuable tool. You're watching
100%
guard passer in the world explain why he's doing what he's doing in real time. You know, that did not exist for us when we were blue belts. We just had to watch an IBJJF match and try to figure it out what fucking Homoloba Hall was trying to do. And
yeah.
Good luck. But now you can literally be inside Gordon's head while he's doing his best position. If you can't get something out of that, I think, you know, there's just something wrong with the way that you're trying to approach it. But yeah, I think those guys are at real good quality. One I'm personally watching right now is Nicky Ryan's back takes off of leg locks, which is cool for me. You know, obviously I enjoy going for a lot of the leg locks, and it's something I'm already decent at. But like you said, you can always learn more, even though I might be all right at it. I know Nicky Ryan definitely has something I could probably learn from. So it's just cool. You get a different perspective. I saw a really cool, like that, the wedging back take off of the outside heel hook position when you can start to kind of pull them up on top. Just different things to play around with in training. And like, I'm already doing it. I'm already trying it. Like I haven't been able to hit it to my level that I want to be, but it's just, it's fun to just try new stuff. That's, to me, is why jiu-jitsu is so fun, because it's always evolving and you're always going to be learning.
I mean, Nicky's like such a good instructor too. I've watched a couple of his instructionals as well. And just like Craig, you know, his instructionals are usually like 4 volumes. Each volume is like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said about an instructional that is that short compared to Danaher or Gordon, which is like I consider Danaher and Gordon's instructionals as almost like, it's like an encyclopedia of that system. Like Danaher, I think some of his best instructionals are his enter the systems, where it's like enter the system Kimura, enter the system triangle, enter the system armbar. It's like his mechanics are so fucking sound that I use them almost every day when I'm teaching and when I'm training, and they're always effective. I mean, you can't tell me that some of those things that he talks about can't be used in live training. So if you're really good at Kimuras and then you want to watch how John Danaher teaches Kimuras, you get enter the system Kimuras, you're like, you will get value out of that. You will see things that you did not know before. And it's just crazy that we have that kind of information. Like the amount of knowledge that guy has dedicated and has contributed to the body of jiu-jitsu, the understanding of jiu-jitsu as we know today, him and Gordon, it's insane.
I'm sure
it's
you've
like
had the experience. I'm sure you've had the experience watching a Danaher DVD, and the one I'm thinking of is the Enter the System armbar. And I'm at this point, I'm already a black belt. This is a few years ago. I'm already a black belt. I'm watching this Enter the System armbar DVD, and I'm going into it thinking like, okay, I'll probably pick up a couple things, but like I'm a black belt. I know armbars, right? And like I'm watching it, and I'm like, man, I almost feel embarrassed how little I know. When this guy's talking,
I know, dude.
Like, you know, I'm like, man, I didn't know this and I didn't know that. And like, honestly, I'm like, man, I'm a black belt. Like, I feel like I should know this, but you know, you just don't know what you don't know. And it just goes to show you like, man, there's so much more to learn. I thought I'd be like, oh, a couple notes on this. And it's like, you know, I have pages and pages and pages of
notes,
things I can do better on the armbar. Now it's a whole position. It's not just an armbar technique. So yeah, it's something I've experienced a few times. And I'm someone like you said, I'll go back and I'll watch the basic stuff over a lot of new stuff, because where I'm teaching a lot of classes, I know Nicky Ryan's back take off of leg locks, while it's awesome, it's probably not something I'm going to be showing a lot of my students. What I'm going to be showing them is arm bars, Kimuras, triangles. This is the enter the system stuff that you want to watch, because he shows it at the basic level. He tries to show it for people that aren't athletic, that aren't flexible, you know. So I think there's something to be said about really going home to those basics, and it's something I really, really, really try to spend a lot of time on, the good fundamental techniques.
And you know, it's funny you talk about fundamental techniques and how you almost felt embarrassed as a black belt and you didn't have this knowledge. I had the same realization, but the instructional for me was the half guard passing by Danaher. He has I believe it's called dynamic pins and half guard passing. It's in the gi, actually. I love Danaher too, because he does instructionals in the gi, right? Which for me is like really valuable. And I'm like, I'm watching it. I'm like, I can't believe I don't know how to pin someone in the half guard properly. Like, I'm a black belt I'm like, how did I get to black belt without like effectively, because I'm seeing what he's showing and I'm like, oh my God, I've been doing it wrong this whole time. Like, no wonder why I can't effectively hold down anyone who's like super good. So because in my young journey when I was like purple and brown, I became infatuated with like barambolos and leg locks and a movement based game. I never had that game where it was like, no, like take immobilize your opponent, use pressure over time to hold them down. Like, and then I started watching Gordon. I'm like, oh, like he's not even moving very much. He's just pinning the guy and making his life miserable and using his weight. And then the whole like camping half guard passing concept that like blew my mind too. And I'm just like, I don't even know the fundamentals. Like I've gone to black belt and I've had some success with this style, but like I'm missing some crucial, like there's huge holes in my game when it comes to like passing through the half guard and things like that. So you can always, if you are someone out there who's just like, I feel like there's this system that I'm not well versed in, you can literally just buy that or pirate it or whatever and have that knowledge and study the best coach and athletes in the world and have that information. Like when I was a brown belt, that didn't exist. There wasn't like BJJ Fanatics wasn't really a thing. There were instructionals, but they were hard to come by and they were honestly pretty fucking bad. Now you got Danaher being like, here are the 5 central problems with arm bars. And you're just like, holy shit.
It's like a PowerPoint. I was like, where was this when I was blue belt, you know?
Yeah. And you know what's fucking crazy? Apparently that guy, as much knowledge as he has in grappling, I've heard he has even more knowledge in striking. Like it's insane how much that guy has. That's why I everyone's like, oh, well, he's an asshole. He abused ukes and all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, I know, but like, the guy's so like, I respect what he's done for the sport so much because he's given so much of us so much information, you know?
What I think too, it's interesting that you said that too. And I don't know Danaher as a person. I can't say anything about him personally. I don't know the guy, but I said this to my students in a class the other day. I was like, I think it's almost good that I can get all this information from Danaher, but I don't actually have to be in his class. And I don't and I don't mean that I know it sounds bad if you're a Danaher fan, but it's just a unique thing. I guess that's what I would say. It's just a unique thing that you can kind of be a fly on the wall, get all this information. But if you're in the scene, that there's some kind of weirdness sometimes with gyms and classes and stuff. And I'm just saying I think can be a unique experience and a benefit to get the information and not actually have to be in the physical location. Because if I have to go to Texas, that means I'm away from my family and away from my life that I know everything at. Yeah, I can build up my jiu-jitsu skill probably faster than I could here, but that's not how life works for a lot of people. So I feel like for me, it's really, really good. And it's so unique that I can get all this information from Danaher, but I don't even actually have to be there. And like, I just have to get the instructional. So I think it's really good in a way. And like, obviously you have to separate the person from like the skills, but that's true in any sport, dude. You think these people that are in the NBA and making all kinds of money in the NFL are like, oh, they're all great people. Like we all have stories, and I've seen people on TV that like have been in terrible, horrible situations, domestic abuse and all kinds of terrible things. So I think, everyone in all sports or whoever you're looking up to, you need to be able to separate their skills and them as a person, because hopefully they're good and they have all their stuff in line. But a lot of times they don't, and they can be a real dirtbag as a person, but still be a good athlete. That's the case for a lot of people. So I'm someone that it's easy for me to kind of separate. Okay, I like Gordon Ryan and his jiu-jitsu, but I don't pay attention to like a lot of the crazy stuff that people get mad at him for or whatever. Like I just like watching this guy roll and watching him train. But
totally.
For some people to kind of separate that, and like if they heard this person's an asshole or that person's an asshole, like to them, they can't consume that person's content. And I don't know, maybe you shouldn't. I don't know. I'm not a judge here, but I'm just saying you should, in your mind, be able to separate like the skill set from the person. At least know that they are not like one and the same.
Yeah, like I think through life, like I don't know about you, very rarely am I ever fully unguarded. You know what I mean? Like even around like your family, it's like you always have some kind of a guard up. around your students and your teammates and stuff, like you do portray yourself in a certain way. That's just, we all do it. And like, it's like that saying, like, you never want to meet your idol or whatever, because what if you went to like a Danaher class and he's like pulling hair and slapping people? You're like, oh, wait a minute, this guy's a total asshole. It's like, well, we don't know that, and who knows, maybe that was in a time when, maybe he's changed since then. We don't know. We don't know what kind of upbringing he had in the sport. And he was like a bouncer who got in tons of fights and stuff. So it's like, I think he probably had a pretty rough time in New York, and that kind of trickles down. But that doesn't take away from what he's done for the sport, and just the amount, what he's done for me as an instructor, the knowledge that I've gained from him. It's just like, dude, it's like immeasurable. You know what I mean? I have to respect what he's done for the sport and the athletes he's created, Gordon Ryan, GSP, like Chris Weidman, Gary Tonin, Nikki, like it's all directly related to how great of a coach he is.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I totally agree. Separating the credentials from the actual person. I mean, you kind of have to. If someone's going to be like, oh, I don't watch Danaher, word came out that he slaps ukes and stuff. It's like,
well, then you better not listen to Chris Brown's music or watch, so-and-so's movies, because, I'm sure there's all kinds of those people in every field, right, that have tons of stuff against them and have been terrible people. But, are you really just going to, I don't know. It's kind of a weird one to get into, but I feel like for me, I just like the information, and I just love jiu-jitsu. So like I said, I'm just not into the drama, like the whole new wave and B team and all that stuff. Like, it's cool to talk about it and stuff, but it's like, I don't really care. Like, it's like, we're all getting to see these people. It's all great information. Like, I just
gossip.
I don't get that emotional about like the whole team stuff. I guess I've never been a super emotional guy. I guess I'm more just, kind of thoughtful, I guess. And just, I don't know, but I'm able to kind of separate the person from the athlete. I've been a fan of NBA and NHL and professional wrestling my whole life.
Me too. Pro wrestling.
These guys, they're not necessarily the best people, even though they entertain you.
Who's your favorite pro wrestler?
Oh man, when I was growing up, I'd have to say like probably The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And it's so cool now that like I was thinking about this the other day that I'm thankful that anyone shows up to the classes that I teach. But I was thinking about I used to, when I was a kid, watch wrestling on my grandparents' bed, and they had a big teddy bear that I used to wrestle and like elbow drop and put in holds and stuff when I was like 5-6 years old. And I was like, I'm kind of just doing that now, but people just pay me to do it and just teach them some techniques and stuff. So it's pretty awesome. But I think it's a cool way to come up, because obviously pro wrestling's about entertainment and about having fun. And my classes, they're not pro wrestling, but I definitely get that, where you want to have fun. It has to be a little bit of entertainment, like
Designated winner, man. That is pro wrestling.
Yeah, that's pro wrestling in a nutshell. So yeah, man. And competitive jiu-jitsu, aspects of pro wrestling kind of almost bleed into that. And I read a book, you'll find this interesting, on Gene LeBell. You know who Gene LeBell is, obviously.
Of course.
The godfather of grappling. And he talked about how he learned a lot of his grappling from Lou Thez, who was a really, really old school professional wrestler. And he was talking about how all these submission holds from jiu-jitsu, he's seen them before, seen pictures of guys doing them in like the 20s and 30s from pro wrestling, because like it all kind of came from that. They all kind of grappled. They knew a little bit what they were doing. The old school guys were like the shooters, right? And they actually knew some grappling. So it was just funny where he said, everyone thinks that they know and kind of created their own thing, but he said it all comes back to pro wrestling, all of it, all the submission holds, all the grappling. And I just thought that was so awesome, because some people, they really don't want to hear that. they really don't think professional wrestling has any place in like martial arts or anything, but it does. Like people watch it and love it, and it's just interesting to hear how some things evolved from it and like still live on today. So I think it's great, man.
Totally. I can't watch it anymore though. I only watch the classic shit. How about you? Do you still watch it?
Not I'll watch some stuff. Like there's some guys I like that still wrestle. Like I love Bryan Danielson. He's awesome. I always watched him when I was a kid and he's still around. So there's a couple guys that I'll kind of watch, or just like YouTube, promos. I'm a big promo guy. Like I love watching the old school promos, especially
fuck yeah.
Like Terry Funk just died recently, so I was watching a bunch of him and Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair. We always loved it, man. When a couple of us that had an apartment that trained together. There was there's always crazy snowstorms in the winter in Canada, but there was one winter where we were living together and there were snowstorms like every single Wednesday for like a month straight. And we bought the first 20 WrestleManias on DVD. And we were just firing.
Just watched them all.
Just watching them all
just watch Taker get all those victories.
yeah, it's great, man. So, yeah, man, we used to love it, man. We had a lot of fun watching wrestling back in the day.
What I remember like getting into pro wrestling in like middle school, and then high school rolls around. I'm like, oh no, not high school. It was middle school. And I was like, like with my buddy that were really big into pro wrestling, we're like, hey, let's join the wrestling team. And we go in there and they're like, hey, you got to wear these singlets and whatever. And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't fucking wrestling. What are we doing here? They're like, yeah, like you want to like grab the guy's balls and like turn him over. I'm like, what? Like what? Wait a minute. Like, I guess we're doing this now. I didn't wrestle in high school. I did a couple of years of like real wrestling, and then I didn't really grapple for the longest time and played hockey instead. And then I got into Jiu Jitsu like right after high school. I just want to ask you, like, who do you think is the most overrated wrestler of all time?
The most overrated wrestler of all time.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you underrated as well. And I have my picks.
Let me hear yours first. It might jog my memory to
what? Oh, okay. I would say as far as overrated wrestlers, honestly, I think probably the most overrated wrestler, I'm gonna say honestly Hogan, probably, because if you see some of the fucking chair shots that guy's dished out, they just look so bad. And like some of the way he sold stuff, like I know he's an icon in the sport and I know he power slammed Andre the Giant, like I get all that, but like, man, sometimes I'm watching him, I'm like, how did he get so big? Like as far as his actual wrestling ability, I think it's like pretty lackluster. And as much as I love him, I also think Undertaker's pretty lackluster too, because he's got this like slow, boring style. He always looks like he's fucking out of breath, just like this, like so slow. But like at the same time, there's just like a mystique around the Undertaker. Yeah. So I would say I used to say I thought Flair was overrated, but Flair has taken a lot of like huge bumps over the years, and I kind of respect him.
I feel like
I would say the most underrated.
More as I get older too. I appreciate Ric Flair more as I get older, and that kind of made me have some thoughts. I'll tell you who I would have said when I was really into wrestling. I would have said John Cena is the most. Yeah, because he was someone I really didn't like. This would have been kind of towards the end, I guess, when I was just getting out of wrestling, but he was still popular, and I was like kind of just getting into being a teenager, still into it. But I think I quit it
when he was coming in.
Yeah, I thought he was terrible. But now again, like, looking back at it, like I see, like, I definitely appreciate him more too. And you don't really realize when you're just like watching as a fan, like really how big those guys are and how much money they're making and how like they're the ones filling the arenas, John Cena and Hulk Hogan, even sometimes if they're like a crap wrestler or performer in the ring. That's a lot of times not what it's about. Just like jiu-jitsu, the best match on who's number one, it's probably not the one that's going to sell the card. It's the one where the guys are talking the most trash or the one that has the most story or, that's really what people get into. Like, it's not just like the best kind of action or whoever has the best moves. So, yeah, I feel I see so many similarities between the two. But, yeah, I would have said, when I was a raging teenage wrestling fan that John Cena is the most overrated wrestler.
or like CM Punk, like get the fuck out of here. I can't stand this shit, honestly.
Yeah,
I was
CM
done
Punk,
way before he came on the scene. So
yeah, no, CM Punk definitely great on promos, but then if you watch him in the ring, you know, you don't feel like he's anything special. And then if you watch him in like UFC and like a real competitive environment, you think, well, geez, man, I feel like my fucking dad would fucking beat this guy, you know? Like,
I know he looks horrible.
yeah, goes to show you that, man, pro wrestling's so different, and you don't need to be athletic, and you just kind of have to have a thing. It either has to be like talking or being entertaining in the ring, or just having this crazy persona. You just have to have something and really lean into it. And once people kind of see you and like, you know, CM Punk, he doesn't seem like he has an athletic bone in his body. But man, people really love to see that guy on TV and love to see that guy talk. And it seems like he sells out arenas and stuff. So, and I do kind of like CM Punk in that he's like, yeah, I did it. And I fought in UFC. Like, you know, like you do it, you know, you get to the point where you can fucking make $2 million for one fight or whatever it was. And he kind of knows like, yeah, I'm not good at this, but I have such a name and such a following that, you know, no one else would be able to do this. So I do and respect him for that, and that he's just doing whatever the fuck he wants, and he doesn't care that you think he sucks, and maybe he does suck, but you know, that guy can say he fought in the UFC, and like a lot of people can't say that. So I can respect him for that.
And it's funny how you said like everything comes from pro wrestling. It's like the shit talk that we see in MMA and in Jiu Jitsu when they're trying to sell it. It's totally, you know, trickles down from like pro wrestling when they're hyping up the match before.
Well, dude,
they're just screaming into the mic.
He is the new school Ric Flair. You know, if you watch him getting ready for these Mayweather fights or any of his big events, like you can't tell me that guy hasn't watched pro wrestling and taken some
of course
from that. You know, he has. There's no way he hasn't.
Okay, most underrated wrestler, and I know who I'm gonna pick, and I don't think you'll be able to guess who.
Man, I was always a big Bret Hart fan. I still am.
Oh.
And I would have to pick Bret Hart because I feel like he was so underrated in his prime. He's very appreciated
so good
now. He's very appreciated now. But I feel like he's so underrated for how like good he was, like just as like a wrestler, and like he could really like, you know, I feel like I could put on a Bret Hart match and with my mom here, and she would care by the end of the match what was going on, and not everyone can do that. So I feel like even though he's, you know, obviously hugely famous and stuff, Bret Hart is still the most underrated.
You know, it's so funny you say that. My pick has always been and probably will still be Owen Hart.
Oh, nice. I love it.
Super technical. The things that he could do, all the flipping and like Hurricane Ranas and crazy shit. He was like one of the guys. I recently went back and watched like a bunch of old WWF events, and I was just like, man, how fucking good was this guy? It was crazy the things he could do, but he never got that like final push. You know what I mean? He was never like full on bona fide, like the champ, the top dog like Bret was. And I think if he didn't die tragically, he probably would have gotten that push because right before he died, a bunch of guys came over from WCW, like Guerrero and Dean Malenko and Jericho, and like all these guys came in, and you know, he was about to get that final push. He was kind of playing like a comedic sort of mid level guy, but he had the talent to be the top guy. He just never really got that push.
And he was a big guy too. Like he was like 230, 240, and he could fly around like a small, right? So and another thing too, it reminds me so much of like just like stuff that goes on today, like Owen Hart. Man, he's so entertaining. And the thing with like pro wrestling and pro wrestling promos, like, okay, they're like a minute long, 2 minutes long, you know, and like they hook you in at the start. They're entertaining, but they don't talk for fucking 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And to me, like, that's like what fucking Instagram reels are and stuff nowadays. Like, it's just like, it's pro wrestling promos, you know, you have a minute to kind of hook someone, give some information or talk or whatever. That's kind of how I started looking at it this year. So if I have a big tournament or a big match coming up, like, okay, I kind of just have to cut a promo on it and just like talk about it. And I got 30 seconds to kind of get it over and talk about the important aspects of it. And I was like, you know, it kind of just comes up in like all aspects of life, like cutting promos, taking bumps. Like, you know, people do it all the time at their jobs, giving speeches. Like that is cutting a promo, having to like, you know, having to talk. So I just see like so many similarities in like pro wrestling with just life now.
How do you feel about Vince McMahon?
Oh man, he's crazy. And I have a Vince McMahon book that I'm really excited to read that someone wrote as like a history about it. I read a little bit about it. Did you know that Vince McMahon at one point was involved with Evel Knievel and putting on stunts with Evel Knievel? Did you know that?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, man. He had a fucking wild life. He also was involved with putting on the Muhammad Ali, Antonio Inoki boxing fight. Somehow he was involved with that. Somehow he owned an arena before he even bought the WWF from his dad. So, man, he's had so much like interesting kind of stuff happen like in his life. And man, pro wrestling wouldn't even be nothing what it was without Vince McMahon. No. Obviously, he's got some crazy scandals and stuff.
He's like a scoundrel. Yeah, I love him though.
Yeah,
he's the best bad guy, dude.
Oh man,
this is a guy. Like, first of all, I love when he'd come out and wrestle, and he'd just be so fucking jacked. He'd just be like, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, he's actually jacked under that suit." And then like, oh my god, and Shane is hilarious. Like, he'll just take the craziest falls. Shane is like a legit like hardcore style wrestler who's just so fun to watch. I remember as a kid watching Shane in the Corporation and being like, I can't stand these guys. Yeah. And now I look back, I'm like, fuck, that guy, that was so brilliant. And like, you can say whatever you want about Vince. Again, like, clearly he's like he's like a scoundrel. He's like a kind of like a mobster in a way. You're absolutely right. Pro wrestling wouldn't be what it is without him. But this is a guy who's like he's the most legendary heel that I could ever think of. I was scrolling through Instagram and a reel popped up and it was Stephanie McMahon. And she said he wanted to do a storyline where he became intimate with her and it would involve them like making out in front of the camera. And she's like, no, dad, like, what the fuck? I'm not going to do that. Like, I can't do that. And he wanted that. And then he suggested to her, okay, well, what about with Shane? I'm like, you guys are fucked, man. He's like like he'll do anything for money. Oh, and obviously it's disgusting in a lot of ways, but in another realm, I'm like, oh, well, I kind of respect like the lengths this guy is like, he's done the most embarrassing things on TV. There's no like limit to what he'll do. It's like, I kind of have to respect it, but like the whole, like, that was just on another level of like, wow, that is like low.
Oh yeah, he seems like the most insane person ever. But yeah, I almost feel bad for people that will be into pro wrestling in the future. They're not going to get to experience Vince McMahon, the character.
I know,
that was just so crazy and just like the final boss, just always losing.
The Attitude Era Vince McMahon, where he was beefing with like Stone Cold and The Rock and shit. It was so good.
And I love pro wrestling books too. I'm really into martial arts books, but I love pro wrestling books.
Yeah.
I read a book earlier this year that was from one of the writers that wrote for Vince McMahon on Raw or whatever. And there were some funny stories about Vince in there too. And one of them was like, I guess Vince just doesn't really follow popular culture like at all. So he had a story where it was at like Survivor Series in Miami or something. And the guy, he was trying to write a joke for The Rock or someone and was like, yeah, something about Dwayne Wade. And this is at the time when, LeBron James and Dwayne Wade were both on the Miami Heat. They were the biggest thing in the NBA and pretty much in pop culture. And the story was that Vince McMahon had no idea who Dwayne Wade was. And he didn't want this joke like written in because he was just like, no, like, I don't fucking know who this guy is or whatever. And they got in a huge fight about it.
Oh my God.
Like Vince just like,
that's hilarious.
It was just like, no, you got to put it in. And Vince just exploded on him. And yeah, it just sounds like, the smallest things can just completely set this guy off. But he's like a billionaire. Like it's weird.
What I've heard is he's like extremely hardworking and disciplined. Like he never misses a workout. He works all the time and he's just like a crusher. You know what I mean? Like that's why he is so successful. And one thing I've always said about Vince McMahon, you can say what you want about his personal life or about him as a businessman. In my opinion, the best commentator ever in pro wrestling was Vince McMahon. Like back in like the 90s, And even I don't know if he was around in the late 80s. I guess he was commentating around like 88, 89, but in the 90s, in the early 90s, like he was such a good announcer, man. That's where I really appreciated his skills.
More interesting Vince McMahon trivia for you too. So he was actually, he didn't really know his father when he was growing up. He had a stepdad when he was growing up. He didn't like his stepdad either. But eventually he got to know his father again when he was a teenager. And in this book, it says, Vince pretty much, he fell in love with his father. Everything that he wanted, that his father was doing in wrestling, he wanted to do. He loved it. And Vince's father, Vince McMahon Sr., he had an announcer. I think it was like his name was Johnny Valiant or something. And he did like the actual like interviewing the wrestlers, like that type of like announcing. And that's how Vince got his start, because this guy wanted more money to continue doing the job. And he tried to hold up Vince Sr. for more money. And Vince Sr. said, no, beat it. You're done. I'm not giving you any more money. So that guy said, all right, I'm out. And then he said, Vince Jr., get out there. So that's how he got his start interviewing, and kind of then he got into commentating. And if you watch any of the really old promos, like early 80s, late 70s in WWF, he's like the backstage guy that's talking while, he's interviewing Bruno Sammartino and, Captain Lou Albano. And I love all this old school stuff too. So yeah, that's how like Vince got his start. And then he started doing the commentating. And then once I think it got so big and he just didn't have time for it. But I agree. He was an awesome commentator. I could watch Bret Hart versus Owen Hart at WrestleMania 10 with Vince, and I think it was Jerry Lawler commentating. I could watch that match all day long.
Oh, yeah. That's so awesome. Do you remember the match? It was Owen Hart and Shamrock in a submission-only match in the Hart Dungeon.
Oh man!
And I think it was Dan Severn as the ref. I think.
Yeah.
And they're like hanging off the pipes and like hits him with a dumbbell at the end. Dude, that was so fucking awesome. Oh my god!
Owen Hart wins.
It starts off and it's like Owen's in the basement with Dan Severn, I think, and then like. The fucking it shows up the staircase and the basement door opens and Shamrock walks out. He's like, in the fucking house. It's so good, man. You can watch it on YouTube. Maybe I should leave the link in the bottom. It's just so hilarious.
Oh yeah. I got a book about Stampede Wrestling. I haven't read it yet, but Stampede Wrestling was the one that the Hart family owned and ran in Calgary. It was mainly run by Stu Hart. And yeah, I can't wait to read this one. I'm sure it's going to have some crazy stories because all those guys came through Stampede Wrestling. A lot of the old school guys, all the Hart family, they all started there before. This is before like the big WWF days. So yeah, I'm really into the pro wrestling and martial arts history.
Cool, man. I don't want to take too much of your time. I just had a couple of quick questions for you, and they're just meant to be like quick answers. Just like a couple of upcoming things here. So, okay, Dylan Dennis or Logan Paul?
Who do I think is going to win?
Yeah. And do you think it's real?
I don't know if it's real. Like I said, I'm not a huge drama guy, so I don't really pay too much attention to it. I guess I probably hope for Logan Paul because I'm definitely not a Dylan Dennis fan, or I'm sure he's an all right guy if you know him, but just the persona that he puts on, I don't know.
He's like the most hated guy.
Yeah, and so he kind of leans into it, but I feel like if you knew him, he wouldn't be like that. Like I actually had some matches with Munch, his good friend Mancher Kura. Like
he's super good.
Yeah, he's amazing. I had some matches with him when I was like blue belt, purple belt, and I feel like if he hangs out with Munch, he must be. I'm sure he's cool, but he's friends with McGregor. He's got this persona, and it works for him. So I'm not able to get a fight with Logan Paul. Somehow this jiu-jitsu guy is. So
yeah, I think Logan will probably win. I mean, he took Mayweather to decision.
Yeah, right.
And I think he's way bigger, and he looks juiced out. So I'm pretty sure he's gonna, But people forget how actually sick Dennis is on the ground, man. He's like I think he won worlds at Brown or something.
Yeah.
Like he's nutty.
Worlds at Brown. Like he's really, really good. He just hasn't, I don't know, I guess he hasn't made a lot of noise in like competition, but he even had some competitive matches with Gary Tonin, like in Polaris.
And Gordon Ryan, man.
Yeah, and Gordon Ryan. So yeah, he's definitely no joke, but yeah, I guess I'd have to take Logan Paul.
Yeah. What about I think we can both agree Hulk's not going to beat Gordon, right?
No way. Hulk's not beating Gordon.
No way in hell. I don't know why they made that match. Who do you think can beat Gordon Ryan, and who would you like to see fight Gordon Ryan?
Man, it's tough. I think about this like every day.
Who could beat this fucking guy?
The only one that can beat him is himself, I guess, like, and just him having a shitty training camp or doing something dumb, but he's not going to do that. He's too smart to do that. So, in time, someone will come along that will beat him. He said it before, obviously someone's going to beat me at some point, but he's just on such a good run now, like technique and tactics, right? He's got both of them to the highest level. I really, really think Lucas Barboza is an amazing jiu-jitsu fighter, but I just don't think he has the skills to give Gordon problems
or the size.
And Gordon, like, he's getting all these matches in his rule set too, which it's great. I'm not saying he shouldn't do it because he's earned the right to do what he wants. But if I would give people a lot better chance to beat Gordon in like a 10-minute match versus like a 30-minute match, I'm not picking
Definitely
Gordon in a long match. But if he went against like Felipe Pena in like a 10-minute match, I mean, yeah, I'd probably still bet on Gordon, but I could see maybe Pena getting a sweep or something. So I think it'll be like either like a rule set, like he'll either lose like an EBI, like it was close, the one of him and Nicky Rod, right? I don't think Nicky Rod would beat him in like a long match like in ADCC, but I think when Gordon loses, it's either going to be like kind of the circumstances of the rules, or it'll just be further along down the road when there's someone that's come up enough that has good enough technique that they're just able to catch him. It happens in jiu-jitsu. So
yeah, at this point, I kind of want to see him lose, not because I don't like him, but because I want to see who can present a problem to him that he could not solve. You know what I mean? Like I'm genuinely curious, like who can solve the Gordon Ryan problem and actually outwit him, because he's so, like you said, if anyone who watches his instructionals, the guy is like so many levels above the best guys. Like at this point, I don't even know who I could say could rival him. But it'd be cool to see another Buchecha match, but like he's already beat Buchecha, he's just going to beat him worse. It's not going to be like Murigali. Like, I don't know.
Teammates. I feel like eventually, give that enough time, they're not always going to be teammates.
But they'll never fight. They even said so.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll fight in like 5 years or something. But the one that's the dream one for me, and I know it's never going to happen, is Hodger Gracie. Because there's a part of me that still thinks, man, if Hodger wanted to, he could fucking put in a camp and still be right there with the best in the world. He's that good.
Oh, for sure.
My opinion. But, I know Gordon, he really looks up to Hodger. I wouldn't say they're teammates, but they really, really respect each other. And I don't think that's ever going to happen, but it would be my personal, wish. Man, I would love to see that. Hodger Gracie and Gordon Ryan go at it on the competition.
I would love to see Hodger put the gi on and just go win worlds. That'd be fucking so awesome.
He totally could too. He's so dominant.
Totally.
Such an amazing person.
I think at this point, I'd love to see Gordon fight Hugo again, even though I don't think Hugo can do anything to him. Like, I don't see what Hugo could possibly do to Gordon, but I want to see Craig fight Gordon. I think that would be interesting, just because there's that whole, like, Gordon's just like waiting. He's like, eventually we're gonna fight, and I don't forget
folder of pictures and videos that he's gonna unleash on.
Oh God.
But I agree, Victor Hugo. To me, he's the skill-wise, he would be the closest that could give Gordon a challenge. But again, we've already seen it at ADCC. He already beat Victor Hugo. It was pretty convincing. But Victor Hugo, he's definitely getting better. But still, skill-wise, it's only Murigali that could potentially touch him, and they say they're not going to fight. It's going to be tough, man. It's cool to see him take these matches and still be active. But yeah, I don't personally think there's anyone he's going to fight in the next year that is really going to give him too much of a challenge.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite grappler?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would have to be Gordon right now to personally watch. Coming up, it would have been Marcelo Garcia.
Same.
He was a huge influence on me, and also Hodger Gracie, just because he was so dominant. I was actually at the World Championships. It would have been the last one that he did, and I went to the Worlds in 2009, 10, 11. I was injured in 12, and I went 13. and I haven't. Those are all the world championships that I went to. And the first year or two that I was there, Hodger competed, and that was the year that he won every single match by cross choke from mount. And it was just like you're sitting there just watching, just like what he's going to do. Everyone knows what he's going to do, and he still goes out and does it. So seeing someone do that was like just kind of crazy. And Marcelo, just him being a small guy, and just he has such lethal, precise technique. And we were talking about this today in class, how some people kind of have like a rope-a-dope strategy. I do that a lot, I'll kind of let you get a position and then I'll get out, or then I'll go for something. But man, if you watch Marcelo roll, he doesn't allow anything. He is like lethal. He's like a sniper with his technique. He's on the guillotine. He's on the sweep. He's so quick and just like lethal with his technique that I guess it was the first time I'd ever kind of seen that or experienced that. And I was just like, man, if this little guy can do that, like I want to be able to do that. So it was inspiring to see Marcelo Garcia in the early days.
I think for me, coming up in jiu-jitsu, Marcelo is definitely my favorite, and I would say close second would be Rafa Mendes, just because obviously like those are two guys that I always wanted to watch fight. Rafa versus Marcelo.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
I would love to see the Mendes brothers come out of retirement and do some super fights or do a competition or something, but they're really like done with it. It seems like they're not coming back.
And it's crazy because you've been around a long time too, like me, where like we've kind of seen these guys' entire careers come and go. And I remember when Rafa and Guy Mendes were kind of coming up, it was their first year at black belt. Cobrinha was so dominant. We were huge Cobrinha guys. I actually went with
Same.
And we went and trained with Cobrinha for 6 weeks one summer while he was in Atlanta. We love Cobrinha, dude. He was a god to us. Rafa Mendes comes along, and we're like, he's not going to be anything for Cobrinha. Cobrinha did beat him the first couple times, but every time it was a little bit closer. It was a little bit closer, a little bit closer. And then Rafa beat him in the finals of a world championship, I think was the first time. And we were kind of like, whoa, we never thought Cobrinha would lose. It's like Gordon Ryan right now, if someone were to come along and do this, right? And then there was a shift where it was like, okay, Rafa wasn't just like scraping by and beating Cobrinha. It was like each time he was getting a little bit more decisive. One time he got him with a crazy armbar. Man, it was so wild to watch him compete and just see kind of the passing of the torch. Then you got to see Cobrinha come back like after Rafa's run.
And he beat him, right, at ADCC.
Yeah, he beat him at ADCC. So, man, getting to watch some of that rivalry and stuff, like that was so cool. And, I love Rafa Mendes. I thought the same thing when he retired. I was like, he's not going to retire. Nobody retires in jiu-jitsu and MMA. Everybody always comes back every year just for another paycheck. But they really, to their credit, they seemed like they were like, no, our focus is teaching and having our school and raising our families. And, man, they're all in on that. And, they have some incredible students. So hats off to them.
I'm pretty sure you were in the same division as me at ADCC Ottawa, right?
Yeah, we were in the same division. Yeah.
We didn't fight, though. We were on the other side.
Now, I lost to Luca from 10th Planet Montreal. Man, I'll tell you my experience with ADCC Ottawa. It was a great tournament, but, man, I really regret fighting the open weight.
Yeah, dude. What the fuck? That was the first division at, like, I came there and all the guys had already done the absolute at, like, 8 or 9 a.m., and I was like, you guys are crazy jumping in there and like.
Oh, I'm signing up for it. It's the first ADCC in Canada. I'm all hyped up, and then I didn't even think they had an open at the start, and then I'm going through the registration. I'm like, oh shit, open weight. I'm like, well, fuck, I got to do the open weight for ADCC Canada. I can't not do it. This was my thought, but I didn't think the open weight was going to be before the division. Usually it's not. Usually you have.
Did you fight that giant Iranian dude?
No, I didn't have to fight him. I fought a heavyweight from Toronto, BJJ. And actually it was a pretty good match. I lost on, I pulled guard. I can't remember exactly what happened. It was tied on points, and I think I came up on a sweep, but then I sat down, but I stood up too long where it was considered a guard pull. And it was a good learning moment. It was a good learning moment. I didn't feel like I lost. I just felt like, I fucked up the rules. Because thinking, okay, I'm ready to go to overtime, and then the ref like raised the other guy's hand. And I was like, what? Like I thought, we were going to overtime. He's like, no, you lost a point. So I was like, fuck. Like, but it was still a good match. I wasn't like butthurt about it or anything. But what sucked was then, that was at like 10 o'clock. So I had to be there at like 9 o'clock or whatever to, be ready. And then I had to come back at like 1:30 or 2 and division. And man, I put my everything into this match that I had. So it's not like I could just, bounce right back. Like,
you're not fresh.
That takes something out of you. So I had a real tough match in my first round in the division, and I was able to win. A real tough guy. I think he was from Open Mat. I can't remember his name. And then I went against Luca from 10th Planet in Montreal. And I even said to my buddy, I was like, oh man, I feel like I've never been this tired, like at a tournament, It's like, I feel like I got nothing left, but yeah, I feel like, me and Luca had a decent match, but he definitely, he took it to me and he was able to get me with a rear naked choke. And I remember watching your matches too, and you had some real good matches. I think you had a couple leg locks, but then I think you lost to the guy that won the division that I had never heard of at the time.
Michael Demers, yeah. So he's from TriStar, and I have a buddy from TriStar who was there, and I lost to him, and he passed. He got an underhook and then passed me, and then took my back, and just as the fight ended, and then I went to my buddy because Michael's from TriStar as well, and I'm like, man, like fuck, that guy was good. I've never heard of him before. He's like, yeah, we call him the secret weapon. That guy is fucking crazy good, and he beat Pio Leclerc, and then he fucking submitted Kieran Kachuk in the finals. I was like, holy shit, this guy's nuts.
Yeah,
he's like one of the best unknown 77 kilogram guys in Canada. I heard he was he's a national judoka. And I actually, one of my old coaches is buddies with him as well. He's fucking hilarious. So, a really nice guy. And I was just like, wow, like I didn't think it was going to be much of an issue. And then he's just creaming like the top guys in the division. I'm like, fuck, that's pretty impressive that he could do that.
Yeah, to me, I was like, I'm like you two, I'm sure I'm a big jiu-jitsu nerd. I can look at the division and kind of see, I know these guys are going to kind of be at the top of the division. And I was just hoping I could get far along enough in the tournament to have a match that was someone that was like really, really good, And I think I did. I know Luca's really, really good. He's an awesome competitor. But I know like Kieran was in the division, you were in the division, PO was in the division. Like it's a really, really high level event.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was that was a wicked tournament. And did you know we were also in the same division at the Vegas Open? I think it was in 2019. I think it might.
Oh yeah.
The first time that I met you, we both had matches against Bruno Frazado.
Oh yeah, dude. That was before they even allowed heel hooks. No fucking fair.
100%. Yeah. Or they even allowed.
Yeah, that was fun. And I just got silver in that same division a couple weeks ago. Fuck, I really wanted to get gold. You know what's crazy? And for everyone out there who's listening to me trying to make their jiu-jitsu better, just so you know, you're listening to a guy who's never won a gold medal in IBJJF ever. I've come close a bunch of times. Never won an IBJJF gold. It's so I'm still doing adult, right? And I'm 30. I'm almost 36, but it's not an excuse. I just can't fucking get that IBJJF gold no matter how hard I try. And I was like, "Okay, this is my time. Like I'm going to get it this time." I felt so confident. And I look at the guy who won. I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. He's from Unity, so I assume he's good. And like, we both double pull, we both stand up. We both double pull, we both stand up. We both double pull. And I'm like, okay, this is stupid. I'm just going to play guard. He stands up, gets an advantage, and just wins the match by an advantage. Like, just plays keep away. And then after, he's like, yeah, man, to be honest, I don't even care. I just try and shut you down. I just want to win. I'm just like, oh, what the fuck, man? And then I look and he won Nogi Pans last year. I'm like, oh, this guy's like legit. I've never heard of this guy before. His name was Francisco. Can't remember his name. I've never seen the guy before. Just like super tight on the rules and basically just like forced me to play his game.
Yeah.
And he has wicked judo too. So I was like, okay, I don't really want to stand with this guy. So he knew I was going to pull. And so we kept doing that. Right. And I'm just like, sometimes I look at the IBJJF rules and I'm just like, this is just so silly. Like we both sit down, first person to stand up gets an advantage. And then that's how you win, And it's just like, I guess.
At one point, I was all about it. I loved it. And like, a big goal of mine was to win worlds. And like, I got some medals from the world championships. I got a silver.
Oh, you froze up.
Oh,
there you, hold on. You there?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Say that again.
Yeah. So
big goal of yours.
I'm someone I've really in my earlier days of training, I focused a lot on IBJJF. I went to a lot of opens. I wanted to win the world championships at blue or purple or brown. Is a huge goal of mine. I got a silver and a bronze. It was great. I won a couple, like, New York Open or whatever. But now I feel like I'm so much more towards the ADCC rule set and more just kind of like a more well-rounded jiu-jitsu approach. I'm also into like the self-defense aspect of jiu-jitsu too. I think that's important, especially for newer people and like, women and kids who may, actually get into a fight. It's not just going to be a fucking double guard pull situation. Yeah. So I think IBJJF is great, but it's basically kind of turned jiu-jitsu into so much of a sport that it's lost some of like the kind of martial arts aspect of it. And you really have to really kind of game the system sometimes. And I was someone that was really good at that. And, I won medals that way, double pulling and just beating people on technicalities. And you kind of have to be smart with that.
Yeah.
But I think ADCC rules are personally a bit better for just what I want my students to be strong at in jiu-jitsu.
I agree. And I think it's more exciting. And I think that it's harder to score, which is more, you can't just win by an advantage. Even though, I don't know if you know this, they told me at the rules meeting, they have like an invisible advantage system.
I heard that. They kind of...
Based on initiations.
Yeah. I have heard that before.
Yeah. Okay. Last question I got for you. You got any competitions coming up? What's next for you?
Yeah. So I don't have anything on my immediate schedule. Like you said, we're expecting our daughter to be born here kind of anytime.
Oh yeah. That.
I don't. Yeah. I just competed recently at it was called the Road Grand Prix. It was a tournament I won. It was a no time limit tournament. I had 3 no time limit matches, and I won.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah, championship belt, too. It was awesome. I
Sick.
Lost the previous 2 times I tried to win it the last couple years, so it was a big one for me to win. I was really happy with that. I'm still savoring the moment of wearing that belt around. But
congratulations.
Thank you. But the next one that kind of piqued my interest, I would say, was I saw that they're doing some more ADCC Opens early next year. I think there's going to be one in February in Toronto.
Montreal and Toronto.
Yeah, and Montreal, I think they're doing in April. So I was potentially looking at that. I was thinking maybe Toronto. I'm not 100% sure or anything on it. I'm just I'm kind of just brainstorming and thinking about how that would look. But that is something I would be interested in because I really love those ADCC competitions. And now, as you know, Matt, having some experience at these competitions is so valuable. Now I know I'm not doing the fucking open weight next time I go. I'm just going to focus on my division. I'm going to have been there before. I know what it's like. I feel like I'll have a much better performance and I'll actually really be able to give it my best effort. I show.
Nice. Well, why don't you tell the folks where they can reach you, where they can contact you and listen to you?
Yeah, sure. So everyone can contact me or reach me at Presley BJJ, Instagram, YouTube, on Facebook, Presley BJJ. You can go on my website, presleybjj.com, to learn a lot more about me. I love to train with all of you out there listening and watching to this. I love training with everyone, drop-ins, if you're experienced or not. I'd love to share my passion of jiu-jitsu with you. I love meeting and connecting with new people. Even if you just want to talk about jiu-jitsu, just shoot me a message. I'm sure we can have something interesting to talk about. So yeah, I just love it, and I'm someone that just kind of likes sharing my passion, and I'm very thankful to be in the position that I'm in, someone that has a gym, and I'm able to kind of share my experiences and share what I know. So yeah, I am thankful to be being able to do this, and and thanks to you for having me on here. It was a lot of fun. We covered a lot of good jiu-jitsu talk, some fun pros and stuff. And yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. I had a blast.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Josh, for joining us. And guys, if you want to support or contact me, support the show, contact me. I will leave links in the bottom. Other than that, yeah, thank you so much, Josh. And please check out Josh's content. Check out his show, The Great Canadian BJJ Show. That's the name again?
I would love to have you on there in a couple months' time. Maybe we can have a little bit of a lead up, maybe kind of talking about a competition coming up, or maybe that one that just happened. I find people are often very interested about guys like us, how we train and kind of process these competitions. So I thought maybe in a couple months' time, maybe as we're training for this next ADCC or something, we could get on here and talk about what we're doing.
For sure. And then eventually we'll fight each other. It'll be great.
I know it'll happen.
I actually did want to say one more thing, just because usually I update people on the show. Like, I have matches coming up and whatever. And this is going to come out a couple weeks after, but I might as well say it now. I had a match on Saturday with Lucas Wilhan, and I beat him.
Nice.
By ref's decision. Yeah, it was good. Now we're 3-3. So we've each beaten each other 3 times. And this is a guy who I think he's ranked number 1 in ADCC Opens at the 76 kilogram. He's won the Vancouver Open, where he beat me by a back take, and then he won the California Open. So he's pretty highly ranked. If you want to see that match, you can subscribe to my online academy, which would be the best way to support the show. Josh, I'll just send you the link in case you want to watch it.
Lucas is a killer. Lucas is a killer. I think I've seen one of your guys' matches before. And yeah, it was great. I really do. I know I've said to you before at the ADCC, but I always feel like your matches are awesome, man. You're always like, just not the traditional stuff that you're going to see. Like, you're trying shit that you're watching on Mikey DVDs or so. I can see it, like. Yeah,
I'm trying.
Yeah. Right. So it's
funny you mentioned Mikey, because he just Aoki locked Aoki, and then Lucas went for an Aoki lock on me on my sprained MCL, and I was like, fuck. And I started like hopping out, and I'm like, I got to get out of here. And I high stepped out, and then I'm like, okay, now I'm going to fucking try and crush the shit out of you, dude. And I would say in the match, if you watch it, I would say I probably got the better of the leg exchanges, and I got chest to chest a couple times. I made him carry my weight. I think I won the standing exchanges. I know he was sick a couple of weeks ago, so after his first attempt, I started hearing him really breathing heavy, and I was like, oh, okay, this is a good thing. I'm going to start crushing him. And, it's such a contrast in body types. The guy's so long and frail. And I don't want to say frail. That sounds disrespectful. He's long and lanky, and I'm like kind of shorter and more muscular. So it was a very interesting match, and I did not want to go 4-2 against the guy. So I was glad to get that one back. But I'm sure we'll meet probably next year in the ADCC Opens. We'll all be in the same division. But yeah, other than that, Josh, I'm going to let you go, man. Anything else you want to say?
No, man, that was great. It was great to connect with you and, kind of learn a little bit more about you. And it was, just great sharing the time with you. So I really appreciate it.
Great. Pleasure's all mine. Anyways, guys, thanks for joining. Remember, the Essential Jiu-Jitsu podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu-Jitsu. Take care.